Hey folks, welcome back. It's Lenny Lawson, the car guru. I'm sure there are other car gurus out there, probably some a whole lot smarter than me. But I'll bet you one thing, they don't have as much experience as I do being a car dealer, a real live new car dealer. I've been a used car dealer, I've been a finance company, I'm a tractor dealer, a lawnmower dealer. I sell weed eaters and blowers. I sell vintage cars. Well, I buy and sell vintage cars for myself and for others. I've sold, just in the last 8 years or so, I have sold over $3.5 million worth of vintage cars, and probably less than, I'd say, 20% of those were mine. So I have a wide breadth of knowledge when it comes to the automobile. Today, I'm drilling down, though, because I had a good friend of mine. He called me. He said, Lenny, you need to talk about used cars. He said, I read that more and more people are looking at used cars because they can't afford new cars. You need to remind folks. And this was his term, or his phrase. He said, you need to buy a used car from the inside out. I like that. I think that's an excellent way to look at it. But I'm not just going to talk about the inside and the outside. I'm going to talk about all the stuff. Really, I'm going to start off talking about types of used cars. In other words, where they come from and why it's important. And we'll get into that just here in just a minute. I was checking out the news this morning. A couple things had me concerned. The shortage of rare earth minerals. We are so dependent on technology that these shortages will impact the availability of new cars. And right now, I don't have a problem with that because my lot is loaded with new cars. So that's not an issue, but it could be down the road. And I know what it was like when we were short, because when we're short of product, it's tough. It's tough on us and it's tough on the consumer because consumers have to pay more. The law of supply and demand has definitely kicked in because prices are way down. Rebates, incentives are up. We have the availability of low-rate financing, in many cases 0%. Just for example, on our Nissan Frontier pickup, you can get $3,500 cash back or 0% for 60 months. Which would you take? Well, that all depends on your circumstance. Are you a cash buyer? Obviously, you're not going to take 0. If you take 0, how long would it take for you to save the difference at normal interest rates for not taking the $3,500? What if you trade every 2 years? Probably should have taken the $3,500. It's just a math problem. It's something that you can figure out. Do you know what an amortization schedule is? Well, if you don't, just go to your accountant or your accountant friend or somebody who knows what an amortization schedule. I have a hard time even saying it. But yeah, if you can do one at 0% for the purchase price of the car and then do another one with $3,500 rebate at normal interest rates, you can see where the lines intersect. Well, you'd have to graph it first. And you can see where it makes sense for you to either go one way or the other. So that is a pretty simple thing. And the reason we have big incentives like that right now is because car sales are slowing. Why are they slowing? It's because the doggone things are expensive, and that's one of the reasons why people are buying used cars right now. People that wouldn't even consider buying used cars before are considering it now for a lot of reasons. So what are the different types of used cars as far as sources? Well, the obvious is to buy one from your neighbor, a private party purchase. If they're your neighbor and you know them and you love them, then that can be a safe purchase. If you don't know them, there are a lot of potential pitfalls there. We're not going to get into that, but we will. Well, we have. Somewhere in the past 500 episodes, I have covered that. But yeah, private party is one source. Independent used car dealer is another. This is the guy that just has a sign out front that says Billy Bob's Used Cars or something more creative than that. And so there are a lot of people in the used car business. There's a lot of folks that they say, well, I think I can sell cars, and so they get a dealer license, which is easier said than done. especially in the state of Tennessee, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to be an official used car dealer with a sales license. There are people who are unofficial used car dealers without a sales license, and shame on them. But there's a lot of people do that. They just flip cars. There are folks out there that rebuild totals and then wash the titles. In other words, they get a clean title that doesn't say salvage on it, and they sell them to unsuspecting people or to people who know that they're salvage. Maybe their friends or neighbors. They don't mind driving a vehicle that has a salvage title. I guarantee if you buy one and you finance it with the bank, they want to know whether it's a salvage title or not. So you have those folks. Then you have new car dealers like me that sell a lot of used cars. And then you have the public companies like CarMax, Carvana. You know, they have two totally different philosophies, but they're basically the same thing. Where do they get their cars, Lenny? Well, they buy them off the street from a lot of people. They buy them from other dealers. Most of the cars that they sell come from auctions. You know, they go to dealer-only auctions, or they don't go. They just sit in front of a computer, and they have buyers that sit there all day long and just buy cars and outbid other people. If you buy a car from CarMax or Carvana, you're paying full retail price. There are no discounts. It's the worst place to buy a used car, except for the fact that it's probably not got a salvage title. Okay, so those are the places. What are the vehicles? Well, they're either trade-ins at new car dealers, which dealers, they'll have them for 60, 90 days and say, okay, this thing isn't selling, so they take it to the auction and they sell it. So that's one reason. Or trade-ins that the dealers just don't want to keep. They don't fit their market, their model mix. Like, for example, I don't like to trade for a BMW. If I trade for a BMW, I'm taking it to the auction, or I'm getting what we call a buy bid from a BMW dealer or some type of dealer that specializes in German cars. Of course, I don't like trading for Porsches either. Anything that's outside of my wheelhouse, I'm a Ford Nissan dealer, and I do the best with domestic and Japanese and Korean imports as used cars. So that kind of fits my model mix. Other places cars come from off lease. These are people that have had a car leased for 2, 3, 4 years, and they don't want to keep it. They don't want to buy it out at the end of the lease, so they let it go back to the manufacturer. The manufacturer takes them to the auction, sells them to dealers. Dealers bring them back to their lots. Well, I say dealers, but CarMax and Carvana, and they buy a lot of off-lease vehicles, and it's a good way to stock your used car department. Also, fleets, and this would include rental car companies. Rental car companies buy a lot of cars during the year, and they'll keep them in service for however long their process is, and then they'll take them to the auctions and they're selling. Or if it's an actual program car, the manufacturer, like Chevrolet, may sell a bunch of cars to National Car Rental. Say, you keep these in service for 90 days to 6 months, we'll buy them back at a predetermined rate of depreciation. They buy them back, they take them to a dealer auction, and they only let GM dealers buy their GM cars, or Ford dealers buy the Ford cars. So this is what they term program cars. Have you ever heard that term? Well, that's what it means. It means that it's a program that the manufacturers offer to rental car companies to sell them cars and then agree to buy them back. It's kind of a guaranteed business model for the rental car companies, and they like them. And then you have fleets also where, let's say like a big company like, I don't know, DuPont, and they buy 500 vehicles for their sales staff or their engineers or whatever. When they get to a certain mileage, they take them to the auction. They sell them to a dealer or to a auto broker, and that broker consolidates them, takes them to a big auction, maybe in Atlanta or Statesville, North Carolina, or Nashville, and they roll them across the lane, and they sell all the cars at whatever they bring. It's an absolute auction. So that's where cars come from and where they end up, or how they end up getting on dealer lots. And I'll take my first break. I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, so now comes the hard part. You're ready to go shopping for a used car. What do you do now? Well, a lot of people just go online and they find what they like, and they show up at the dealership and they negotiate a deal, and then they drive off in it. And then they start having problems because they don't know what they bought. They didn't do any research. They didn't find out that certain model years of Hyundais have severe engine problems. And they just happened to buy one. And then they're wondering why, we're having to add a quart of oil to this like every other time we fill up with gas. Or they bought a car from 5, 6, 7 years ago that has a CVT transmission or a dual clutch transmission like the old Ford Focuses did and Ford Fiestas. And, they say this thing just does not shift correctly. What's wrong with this transmission? Well, then they take it to a independent repair shop and they say, you're going to have to take this to the dealer. We're sorry. So they go to the dealer, and it's going to cost between $3,500 and $6,000 to fix it. Well, they don't have that in their budget, and they wouldn't have to worry about it if they'd done some of the things I'm getting ready to tell you about. So you ready to go? This is what you do before you buy a used car. Numero uno, or number one in English. Pull the history from Carfax or Experian AutoCheck. One of those two places will give you a history of the ownership of the vehicle, whether or not it's had any known accidents. When I say known, sometimes people will wreck cars and have them repaired and not report it. And so, you buy a car and the paint doesn't match and you're wondering what didn't show anything on the Carfax. That's why. So it also shows you basically how many owners the vehicle has had, where it was registered. If you're buying a four-wheel drive truck and you live in Alabama, do you want to buy a truck that's spent the last 6 or 7 years in Michigan or New York? I wouldn't, because I worry about rust. And that's a real big issue up there. And so that's why a lot of those people up there like to buy used trucks from down here. They don't rust. They'll rust eventually, but they don't rust as easily because we don't use a lot of salt on the roads and we really don't need it down here. So pull the history. And if you can't pull a full history, you just send me the VIN number of the vehicle and I'll pull it for you. 423-552-2020. Just send me the VIN. Say, would you pull the history on this vehicle? I'll do it. And I'll tell you what it is. I'll print it out and I'll send you a copy of it. Okay, what else? Oh, numero dos. Number 2. Pull vehicle reliability reports. Where do you get those, Lenny? Well, if you subscribe to Consumer Reports, the magazine, you can get them from them. But that does require a subscription. JDPower.com is another place. They have a vehicle dependability study that they have done that goes back a number of years to tell folks or to basically enlighten people as to the reliability of certain makes and models. You can have a company that has a great reputation, but they have 1 or 2 models that have some issues. And wouldn't you like to know which ones those are? Well, this is one way to find out. Another great website is called carcomplaints.com. That's a pretty good title. So you just go there, you put in the make and the model, and it'll tell you, it gives you a really cool graph of which years had the most problems. And so if you see like 2013 Hyundai Santa Fe, for example, you're going to see a lot of problems in that particular year, but as the years, subsequent years to that, they've done better. They've figured out what the problem, but you don't want to buy that year of vehicle because that's when they were having all the oil usage problems. I heard of some real nightmares with people that had Hyundais and Kias and could not get the manufacturer to help them. Even if the vehicle was under warranty, they would question whether or not the customer had serviced the vehicle properly. That's just another great reason to keep service records. And it's really hard to get service records on a car that you buy from CarMax, because it's come through an auction. It's probably passed through 2 or 3 hands or businesses. That's different from going to a new car dealer and buying a trade-in, that they traded for. They can give you the previous owner's name. You can call them up. And what do you want to know? Well, What was their overall experience with the vehicle? Did they ever have damage that, they didn't turn into the insurance company? Some people will, I don't know, they might not like you calling, but what I always do is I call the dealership. I said, would you call this owner and see if they would mind me calling them and asking them about this car? If the dealership doesn't want to do that for you, there might be a problem, because that person may have traded that car because it was a problem car. You want to buy that car? No. Another thing you can do, I've lost track of my numbers, is to ask the dealership that sells that particular brand to pull the warranty history on that particular VIN number. Now, there are some dealers that don't want to do this for privacy reasons, but just ask them nicely. Say, listen, I don't need to know the owner's name. I just need to know if it was a problem car, and I'm going to get it serviced here. Surely you can do that for me. I've never been turned down, but I'm a car dealer, and, I always tell them that. And I would call for a consumer. If you were trying to buy a used car from me and you wanted to know if it had, let's say it was a Honda, I'm not a Honda dealer, and you wanted to know what the warranty history was on that car, I'd make that call for you. I wouldn't rely on you to do that. You could sit there with me and make the call. I mean, if they want to sell the car bad enough, then they ought to be willing to do that. Sometimes they're afraid of what the answer is going to be. They don't want to give you a reason to not buy the car. That's sad, but it happens. I know some dealers that would just laugh at you if you ask them to do something like that. We can't do that. It's just, they don't want to do that because it complicates the deal. And they don't want anything to make their deal go sideways. So some of this you're just going to have to do yourself. Okay, so we're going to pull the history, Carfax or Experian AutoCheck. We're going to pull the vehicle reliability reports. We're going to call the previous owner if we can. Now, what if the previous owner was a rental car company? Well, you're out of luck. Is it bad to buy a previous rental car? No, not if the vehicle's been checked out thoroughly. Sometimes rental car companies take better care of cars than the average consumer does. I mean, I'd almost be more concerned about buying it from an individual that I don't know than I would from a rental car company like a program car, because they actually maintain the vehicles. They have to, or the manufacturer won't buy them back under the program. So the next thing is a dealer inspection. Sometimes dealers will do something called a certified used car, and that does protect you a little bit more, but you're going to pay more money for that because you're paying for additional work to be done to the vehicle and also for an extended warranty to be applied to the vehicle. You can always buy an extended warranty contract or service contract to protect you from unexpected repairs. But it would be so much better to find out if it's a good car with a good history, and you don't have to worry about any specific problems that particular vehicle is having. Now, if a car has an outstanding recall, now that could be an issue. I mean, the last thing you want to do is have to take it to a dealership right after you buy it to get a recall done that should have been done by the dealer selling it to you or by the previous owner. And what if it's a serious recall that will force you to park the vehicle? That's not good. So you want to find out if it has any open recalls. The dealer that sells that particular brand can tell you that, or you can look it up on the National Traffic Highway Safety website and find out if there is an open recall on the vehicle that you're thinking about buying. Now, there's another thing called a TSB, or Technical Service Bulletin. This is not a recall. This is basically a recommended repair procedure for a known problem that is provided only to new car dealers who sell that particular brand. So let's say I'm a Chevrolet dealer and certain Silverado trucks equipped with a certain engine have this particular problem. Here's how we recommend that you fix it. That's a technical service bulletin. The problem with the TSB is that you have to pay for it. If it's out of warranty, you have to pay for it. It's not a recall. If it's a recall, the manufacturer pays for it. So I would want to know when I go into the dealership and I'm trying to find out the warranty history of this vehicle. I'm also going to say, and while you're checking, check for any TSBs on this, and that service advisor will look at you and say, how'd you know that? And you're going to say, well, the car guru told me that. You ought to listen sometimes. You might learn something. Okay, I'll take my last break. I'll be back in just 1 minute. Okay, we're trying to avoid buying a problem used car. And I want to help you do that, but you need these notes. Most of this information is in the My Car Guru guidebook. And if you subscribe to that, what does it cost? Free. And how do you subscribe? Send me your email address to my cell phone number, 423-552-2020, and I will send you a PDF, a digital copy of the 32-page long My Car Guru guidebook that covers a lot of different cool things that will save you money during your extensive car life. Oh yeah, and I forgot to mention the walk around and the test drive. Don't ever buy a used car without driving it first. And don't just drive it around the block. Put 10, 15 miles on it. Make sure the tires are nice and smooth, that there's no play in the steering, the brakes stop good, no lights are coming on that shouldn't be coming on. That's pretty much enough time for the vehicle to warm up really good. And if a car's cold and you're driving down the road, it's going to behave differently than if it's warmed up. And that's just something that you need to really do. And if the salesperson wants to go with you, fine. Just tell him to be quiet, because you want to listen for sounds that don't sound normal. If you start a cold car and you hear a ticking noise underneath the hood, that's not good. That means that oil is not getting to the top of the engine. Why is that? It could be because of age issues, because the oil is the wrong viscosity. There could be a lot of different reasons that it's doing that, but that would be an indication that you don't want to buy that car. Does it make noises when it's warm? Because they can misbehave. If you get back to the dealership after driving it 15 miles, open the hood. Make sure you don't smell any antifreeze. You shouldn't smell that sweet smell of antifreeze after you've gotten the car hot. If you do, there's antifreeze leaks. And it could be anything minor. It could be a blown head gasket. It could be a lot of different things. So these things are on you. And you do a walk around, make sure all the paint matches, make sure there's no tape lines around the doors or the edges of the hood, around the trunk lid, because that means that there's been paint work. And these are things that you need to know. This could indicate maybe a phone call needs to be made to the previous owner if it's not in the vehicle history. So I know that's a lot of information, but if you need more, just ask me. You can send me the information on the vehicle you're thinking about buying. I'll be glad to coach you on it and tell you what to look for and whether or not it's having a lot of serious problems, or you can just do the research yourself with the sources that I've provided to you. Well, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.